Trump's interesting because like he is that father figure, and people are like, he was a successful businessman.
He was able to accomplish so much.
Even, you know, 6 bankruptcies later. He's not an authoritarian. He is trying to be like Big Daddy.
I mean, they do call him
US.
daddy and stuff. It's very weird.
Yeah. And I think that's just like really the American experiment. Like, can you put a bunch of wealthy people in a country together, and will they distribute wealth fairly? Will they not try to take power? Like, will we have some sort of oligarchy at the end? Like,
Spoiler alert. No, yes.
and so you almost need like Wario to Trump, right? Like,
Sure. It is easy to sit back and be like, oh, who will do it? And
I'll
I
do
guess
it. I'll do
the
it.
answer is just that
I'll do that
actually us, unfortunately.
No, me. I'll do
Yeah.
it.
I'm sure you will.
I'll do it.
How would you? What would be your first step?
Jeez.
You don't even
Way to
have
put
a
me on the
first
spot, Kyla. I don't know.
I'm looking downtown with Betty on me. Tell me what's going on. Tell me what's going on. So listen up to Betty on me. Tell me what's going on. Tell me what's going on.
Hey guys, we're doing a quick little intro here. If you see the title, you know we have a guest on. It's everyone's favorite Kyla Scanlon, and we're going to get right to that. But first, very important announcement. We are coming to Austin for a Ben and Emil Live. That's right. We'll be live in Austin at the Creek in the Cave on May 8th. And if you want tickets,
Too bad.
go, maybe too bad, and I'll get to that in a second. But right now, go to the ticket link in the description. And too bad if they're all gone, because benandemilshow.com members get first dibs at them. They went up a few days earlier and they got to buy tickets first. So if you want to join us there, it's benandemilshow.com. You get over 100 hours of bonus content and
First month free.
first month free. That is ending very soon though, so get in while you still can. And yeah, we'll post all shows there first for sale.
And one more thing, friends, do us a favor. Like this video. It helps us a lot. Leave a comment. Go wild. And without further ado, here's our interview with Kyla Scanlon. Welcome to the show, everybody. It's the Ben and Emil show. I'm Emil. That's Ben. Whoops, my tie's on too tight. I'm Ben. That's Emil. We've got with us by popular demand, our favorite guest, the fan favorite. Don't tell any other guests that I said she's our favorite guest, but Kyla Scanlon is with us. Thank you so much for coming. You made it all the way over here in one piece. Are your arms tired? Boy, are your arms tired?
From Black.
Yeah. From all
Also,
that
if you're
lunch.
new to Kyla Scanlon, if you don't know who she is,
Get your act together.
Get your act together. You probably know her popular TikToks. You know her book, In This Economy by Kyla Scanlon. If you don't know the book, you got to go buy it and read it.
Yeah.
Work with Bloomberg. All kinds of stuff.
Work with all sorts.
She worked, yeah, in incredible Substack.
Yes.
So
Kyla does.
if you don't know Kyla, you should know.
Get your
Kyla.
act together,
Get your
yeah.
act together.
We've got a lot that we want to talk about with you today. Because we've been trying to have you on for a while, and everything keeps happening all the time. Every single day, it seems that more things are happening.
I will say pretty much every week when we're getting ready to do the show, Ben goes, this would be a great week to have Kyla on.
Oh.
And it's still just a great week to have Kyla on.
Yeah.
Big week.
Yeah. What's happening this week? What's Liberation Day is on tomorrow?
April 2nd.
April 2nd on Wednesday?
On Wednesday.
So by the time this comes out,
no,
it'll be yesterday.
If we're liberated, yeah.
Yeah. We're not going to be liberated at all.
You don't think so?
No, I don't feel any more liberated. But we also live in a
Yeah,
bubble.
because you haven't been liberated yet. I'm excited to be liberated.
That's true. That's true. This is how the French must have felt during World War II.
Well, why doesn't someone explain to us what Liberation Day is for anyone who doesn't?
Yeah,
know?
let's kick it off before we get into.
I don't think anybody knows what liberation is.
No one knows.
Well, so like it's tariff day, right?
Yeah.
Like Trump wants to implement a bunch of tariffs, but they're
And this has been going on for months. The can keeps getting kicked down the road. They make a last minute deal with Mexico or Canada. And so we'll see if it finally goes into effect. But and there's been all kinds of strange messaging around the tariffs too.
And a lot of confusion.
I guess the general idea is that we are going to make it so make it so it's much more valuable for American companies to manufacture here.
That's
with these
the
tariffs.
goal.
That's the goal.
I don't know if that'll work, but that's what they're saying. But
Yeah.
like, it's really interesting because Trump is he's pure isolationist. Like, he wrote this article, or he took out an ad in a newspaper back in 1987, basically being like, we should never help out Japan. And then he lost a bid that he had made on this piano that was used in Casablanca. So he was like trying to buy this piano from the classic movie Casablanca,
Mhm.
and a Japanese trading house beat him.
Good.
And so he became very upset.
Well, how would you feel?
But then he was like, we should really be taxing Japan. And so it's just interesting. He's always been very isolationist. And I think in his mind, if you're the top dog, like, everything should be done just in your country. So it really ignores the concept of comparative advantage, right? Like, other countries are going to be better at producing stuff than the United States would be. And so he's like, well, we should just tariff and then everybody will come, rebuild manufacturing back in the US, but that's so expensive. And firms are like super freaked out. Like the Dallas Fed manufacturing survey,
Oh yeah.
like they were so upset, so
yeah.
mad. Yeah.
Some of them saying, I read some of the comments. We read them a few weeks ago, and it was
perfect.
just, uncertainty after uncertainty. Never seen this before in my life. No idea how I'm just kind of pulling numbers out of thin air because there's nothing on which to base them. I have nothing that I can meaningfully glean for predictions and for cost estimates because everything is just such an unknown.
Yeah.
But it's not a ridiculous notion that American manufacturing should be brought back in some way, right? Like, especially, in the aftermath of the explosion of COVID and everyone kind of finding out like, oh, wow, we're just going to face massive shortages on supplies that we need because we actually don't manufacture any of that kind of stuff anymore and actually have no capacity to. And then also, the amount of jobs that were shipped out in the wake of trade agreements and stuff like that. I think he is appealing to some legitimate grievances that people have.
Yeah. Well, so the problem with bringing jobs back is the jobs being brought back would be done by robots. Like, China has autonomous factories. Like, the idea that we're going to return back to 1950s America where there's the big smoke plumes and you could buy a house on single income, it's just not realistic. If you think about the American economy through the lens of manufacturing, like, we're a service-based economy and we've kind of vaulted above the need to produce things in the US. You're right with like the supply chain breakdown during COVID and how important it is to have, stable supply, especially in terms of semiconductors. But then it's really confusing because he's trying to cancel the CHIPS Act. And so it's sort of like a rhetoric around one thing, but then the CHIPS Act, which is very valuable for building semis here in the US, he's like, no thanks. And so it's like, oh, we'll just build cars.
Yeah.
It's like, I get the premise.
Yeah.
But in action, it just isn't.
I'm also not in support of it. I'm just trying to, kind of tease out
devil's advocate.
the details of what he's actually trying to do. I think the sentiment around all of it has been so confusing, right? Even if you're just taking him at his word, I mean, he's centered so many other things outside of bringing back manufacturing jobs. I mean, just going on and on about fentanyl crossing the border, all kinds of different things, and you're like, wait, what is this about? Are you trying to bring back jobs, or is it?
So the only way that he's allowed to do tariffs as the president is by saying it's the border and fentanyl. So this is all emergency action plan.
Right.
And like, so everything has to be under the guise of fentanyl and borders. It can't really be like reshore manufacturing because he would have to have the power of Congress.
Right.
And so what was passed under the House GOP budget plan was actually Congress giving him their power around tariffs. And so we could see a world where the president does have unilateral tariff power, but right now the reason he talks about fentanyl so much is because he has to. Yeah.
So, I think that's probably a good place for us to start. We want to get into the recession, the markets, politics. But one of your recent articles was about context versus content.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really great diving off point because you talk about this new era where the battle between content and context will, reshape how all policy is created, communicated, and understood. in that we're witnessing a shift where value derives not from the content itself, but from who frames it, where it appears, and how it's positioned. And it feels like this is where we're at with a recession looming, being that those in power are becoming these masterful narrative manipulators. And Trump has been that for quite some time, but it's like now more than ever, it doesn't matter what the content is. It's Trump saying it, how he's saying it, how the message is dispersed. I don't know. Do you have any follow-up thoughts on just that and how it's causing everything to just feel like it's collapsing around us?
Yeah, I mean, I'd recommend people check out the newsletter because it's
so
gets
good.
into that theory. It's like the idea is that ideas don't matter. It's who says them. So like if Joe Rogan tells me to do something, like not believe in what's he talking about now on his show? Like don't believe in the vaccine.
Yeah, get people to just maybe get measles or
Oh
something.
yeah, and like take vitamin
yeah.
A. It's so very RFK Jr. coded. Because I think RFK Jr. was the first person to say that, but people are going to be like, oh, Joe Rogan's telling me this. And like, they don't really question the underlying content. It's more the context. So how is it being said? Who's saying it? The framing really matters. And so you see people not pushing back on ideas as much, but pushing back on who is saying a certain idea.
Right.
And so that's a very weird world to be in because people no longer engage on an.
So you're
also,
saying like if someone sees a Joe Rogan tweet,
yes,
they're not necessarily going to engage with
the idea,
the actual
but the context,
thing he's saying. They're just going, Joe Rogan said something.
Right.
I disagree.
Or I agree. Yeah.
Right. If you're right. I'm defaulting to.
It's gotten so bad. I mean, a good example that a good example that I've seen used from the right is Trump could come out and say, I've found a cure for cancer. And people on the left would say, well, cancer is actually good.
The guy from Sequoia tweeted that, right?
I think so, yeah.
I mean, Trump had the best one himself with I think maybe it was in the lead up to 2016. Yeah, I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue. And
oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, and that's also on both sides of the spectrum. I think maybe that's just like a consequence of everyone
it's both sides.
Using just social media to engage with the world rather than actually like engaging with anyone's actual substantive work.
I think that's a frustrating thing about having conversations like this, because if you criticize Trump, people are like, hello, like that's my guy, you know, and then they're like, you're a lib. And it's like, I think there's a lot of value in criticizing. And I think people are so blinded by ideology where there's no room for criticism. And if you don't allow yourself to be critical, then you're just a follower, right? Like you're not a supporter. And that's a very, very thin line that I think there was a very good article in The Atlantic about how Trump is kind of, they called it patrialism. Did you see this?
I don't think so.
So they were like, he's not an authoritarian. He is trying to be like Big Daddy.
I mean, they do call him Daddy and stuff. It's very weird.
Yeah, I know. What?
They do call. There's like a weird movement.
Yeah, but
among supporters of like calling him Daddy, and it's an odd thing.
The article talks about that, how it's like almost this father figure that like comes to save, and it becomes very difficult, I think, for people to delineate truth from lie when that's the case, because like, oh, that's my father figure, like he would never lie to me, right?
And people are just kind of like blasted with information in the digital age, where I feel like they just kind of need to develop these heuristics where it's like, I need to just kind of order everything in good and bad. Like, okay, that's him. That's that guy. He's on that side. Bad. That's that guy. Okay, he good. And
have you read Roland Barthes ever?
Mm-mm.
So he has an essay on WWE where he talks about this.
Well, he stole it from me. No,
he came into the future and stole your idea just now.
Mm-hmm.
But he talks about this like push and pull between good and bad, and how everybody wants like a good and a bad guy to pin stuff on, and so it becomes very difficult to have that nuance. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No.
But
that was basically
this podcast is all about interrupting Emil, so it's okay.
But that was basically the gist of what I was trying to say. It's honestly very reminiscent of. Have you ever experienced the thing where you're kind of, I don't know, talking about a celebrity or some public figure, and someone will go like, "Wasn't he canceled?" And you go, I don't know. And then they're like, I think he was. And then no one actually knows what anyone did. They're just kind of like, okay, I saw a thing online. I filtered it.
Right, yeah.
And everything's like put into these
blob.
and no one actually like has any substance.
Yeah.
It's all just filters.
I like that you went on to say, direct quote here, we already have models for this in financial regulation where there are strict rules about how investment opportunities can be presented to consumers. I'm subject to those personally. It really sucks. Similar principles need to be applied to information more broadly. And I think you raise a really big idea there that just gets so hairy. Like it just boils down to who determines what the truth is, right? And how information, is that where you were going with that? Just not regulating, but like you said, a similar principles. How would you interpret?
I love when you try to ask her a question. You always like,
my tie is on too
you
tight.
like read the thing and then you're like, oh wait, I'm supposed to ask a question.
Yeah, well, what do you think? What do you think about your own words, Kyla? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I wrote that about a week ago. I still agree with it mostly. So yeah, that was in context to how we talk about information. The stuff that people are able to share, because like we have community notes on Twitter that are able to like take down tweets, or not even take them down, but like add a note and be like, hey, this guy is full of it, don't listen. But if you're on TikTok, like you all both know this, like if you're on TikTok, it's the worst financial information of your life, but it's also a lot of like misinformation just about economics or politics. And so that general idea behind that statement was there has to be rules on like what we are able to show people online, because it is like melting our brains. John Byrne Murdoch over at the FT has this excellent paper where he talks about that we're not getting stupider, we just can't process stuff as well because we're so distracted. Everything's a notification. And I feel that even within myself. Like I'm like, I don't even know where I am. And you're just like parsing so much information all the time. And there's a lot of really great psychologists that have studied this more in depth than I have, but it's really quite harmful.
I mean, I've talked about this a little bit, but just as an aside, I did a brief screen cleanse, no screens.
Dopamine detox, yeah.
Yeah, and it's pretty wild how immediate you're just like, oh, I do have ideas. I need a pen and paper now because I have ideas and things.
What has been like your number one idea?
Just like things I've been thinking about where I'm like, I wish I could.
Square hot dogs.
Yeah,
he was telling me about that. He's like, dude.
I'm always so you know how when you go to a barbecue, there's always
long hot dogs.
Well, and you run out of the hot dog buns, but there's always so many hamburger buns.
Wait, this is really? Are you just going with my bit?
No, I'm just messing with you.
Okay, I was like, Jesus. Hey guys, we want to take a quick break to thank us, the longest running sponsor from our show. You know him, we love him. It's MOOMOO. You know, I've been trading for a long time, and there's a lot of just not very good stuff out there. A lot of resources that can be hard to consolidate and figure out what's what, news stuff, other brokerages. Everybody charges money for every little thing, but not with MOOMOO. First and foremost, news. What are you paying for a Bloomberg or a New York Times or any one of these subscriptions for? You could just get it for free and up to the minute on MOOMOO. They're great. They've also got paper trading. If you're new to trading and you want to get into it, you can open an account and just play around with fake money. And it's great for honing your skills and learning the ins and outs of what makes the stocks move. Then you also got, best of all, once you're ready to step it up to the real money, they got low fees, 0 commissions on stocks, ETFs, and options, plus margin rates starting at just 6.8%. So you can trade without extra costs and stay focused on your strategy. And Emil, why don't you tell them what they get if they sign up for the first time?
Look, if that wasn't enough for you, and it should be, you're crazy if it's not, MOOMOO also provides competitive promotions for new users. MOOMOO offers 8.1% APY on idle cash balances for a limited time, one of the highest in the industry. Plus, new users can enjoy rewards like up to 60 free stocks with qualified deposits and a 3.0% cash reward on portfolio transfers up to $600 in cash rewards.
So are you ready to take your trading to the next level? Join over 24 million users worldwide and start trading smarter with MOOMOO. Sign up using the link in the comments and claim those rewards now.
But, you know, obviously we do the show every week and we like we're researching so many different things, and I'm like, God, it'd be great to really like extrapolate some of these things I've been thinking about. And you're like, but I don't have the time. And then it's like you remove a screen from me, and you're like, oh wait, I actually have
So much
things I want to say about that.
I have a dog that's starving. I need to feed. Holy shit! Sorry, pal. No, I feed him.
But yeah,
once a week.
it's I think we haven't quite reckoned with what we did to ourselves and our attention spans and our ability to process information and sit with information.
God. And I think like the younger generations are unfortunately like test bunnies for all of this. Like we're going to learn so much from what has happened to the three of us and maybe a lot of people watching the show right now. And we're going to hopefully implement some sort of policies around like screens, and people are already removing them from schools, which I think is really great. But it's like, it's so bad. So bad.
Don't you? What concerns me is the amount of, I mean, we did that with cigarettes, we did it with alcohol, but the amount of wealth that has been created in the last 20 years eclipses anything we've ever seen before throughout human history, to the extent that I just don't think that regulating it is possible in any meaningful way, because the value of these tech companies is so large. It is so now intertwined with the country's collective wealth. Everybody's got their 401ks and their IRAs, and everybody's loaded into Vanguard funds that have such heavy weight attributed to the likes of Meta, Google, and so on. So do you have any concern that their massive size will get in the way of any meaningful kind of regulation that we desperately need?
Yeah.
It sucks.
I mean, not only would it drag down the tech industry, but everything with it. I mean, that entire
the
industry.
burgeoning AI.
Yeah. Well, and it's just, I mean, when you're talking about our attention spans, it's all of advertising is just like,
Yeah.
The whole reason for getting us hooked on these things is so that they can just sell you stuff, right? They want you to look at your phone longer so they can place ads on everything and then monetize everything.
Yeah, it's really quite dark. And it's tough because like, so I'm a hypocrite, right? Like I make videos on social media, and the goal there is that I'm hopefully like interrupting people's feed and like, here's a thing on economics and like you can educate yourself.
You're trying to disrupt from the inside.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And like, but it doesn't always feel that way. It's also like, well, maybe I'm contributing to the broad problem here.
No.
But, and this isn't like make Kyla feel better, but I do think like it's really hard because like the marketers are like, oh, we have to rely on the influencers because nobody will listen to us anymore. And so everything has been really siloed into the social media platforms. Right? Like advertising on TV is a little bit difficult. You can still advertise like within Netflix shows or Amazon Prime, I guess, but it's hard. Yeah.
Can I ask you about the regulations around like all the stuff all the information that's being blasted at us constantly? Like, so in some of those, I'm not familiar with that Financial Times article or some of those other things you were talking about. Are they talking about stuff like Section 230 and making tech companies more, responsible for the stuff that's published on their sites, or what kind of like what does regulation look like when you're talking about making sure humans aren't just like overwhelmed by information at all times?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an element of responsibility and then probably disclaimers too. Like if something isn't real, like, you know, TikTok has so many bots. Like there's a bunch of bots of me that are asking people to trade crypto.
Oh, right.
And so it's like stuff like that. Like they're just like Elon and Twitter, for example. Like there just has to be some sort of policy, as you said, about who's responsible for what. And then two, like cleaning up the platform and having disclaimers on content that might be misleading.
Right.
Just real fast on attention spans. My favorite new thing over the last 5 years is now before a movie trailer, there's a mini little teaser that's like, trailer starts now with
What?
just you haven't seen these?
No,
It's
I'm
like the
not good
first
at
5
watching
seconds. I mean,
movies.
it's
It'll be like very quick cuts from the.
Can you believe this guy? Can you believe this? What's going on over here? Between you forgetting what you're talking about and this guy? I mean, geez. Yeah, it's quick cuts. It's just like, trailer starts now. But it's necessary because as we know,
Well, and the best part is if you want to do that, you have to watch a quick YouTube ad first before you watch the ad for the movie.
God.
It's very funny.
That's why I take the time and I go into every one of our episodes and I delete 95% of the mid-roll things that YouTube puts on. You should see it. It's just like ding,
I've
ding,
seen
ding,
you
ding,
tweet
ding.
about it, yeah.
Holy God. Anyway, So the biggest thing we're all thinking about is recession. It's on the tip of everybody's tongue. I see you put that Goldman Sachs just raised the 12-month probability of a recession to 35% from 20%.
And that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, that's good.
That's when
Well,
the
'cause
number's higher, it's good.
If we get a recession, we're all going to be able to afford a house because everybody's going to keep their jobs.
yeah.
I think the
Money's
first
gonna stay
time
good.
I came on this show, we had a similar conversation.
Really?
Yeah, it was like, are we in a recession? And,
Oh, yeah. That was the birth
yeah.
of the Vibe session, which you believe we're no longer in, correct?
But yeah, I mean, Goldman, the reason that they raised that is because of the tariff uncertainty. And we're seeing like massive layoffs, federal workers, and then that bleeds out into the private sector with layoffs of contractors. A bunch of funding has been cut that impacts the private sector. And so what's interesting about the administration is they have this Mar-a-Lago Accord that they're like, oh, we're not actually going to do. But I think it's very similar to Project 2025 where they're like, we're not going to do it. But they end up implementing. Yeah, I know. And that's all about like, okay, we're going to kind of really take a hammer to the public sector, which did need some elements of reform, like, and have everything be the private sector. So that seems to be the plan. But when you have even the goal of that, like even if it works, there's going to be some sort of downturn. And then they seem to be like, yeah, that's okay. Like everybody's going to be fine. But of course, it's much easier to have a downturn in theory than it is in practice.
So you're not buying this short-term pain for long-term gain?
No, because it never works. Like historically, this has never been a successful
What
thing.
about me, who's going to be uniquely unimpacted by the recession and going to be able to gobble up cheap homes?
Oh, yeah, man.
Well, what's interesting about that is after 2008, it was institutional investors.
Always.
That came
I mean,
in.
that's
It wasn't even the little guy.
short memory of these people. It doesn't work like that. You are going to have a horrible time, and huge corporations are going to buy your house.
Yeah.
I remember I had just started. I had just opened my first E-Trade account, and I had like $1,500 in it. And I'm like, I'm going to buy some stocks, man. And I remember seeing Sirius satellite radio trading for 5 cents. And I was like, that's going to go bankrupt. We're in the middle of a recession. No, they're doesn't make any sense to me. Shows how little I know. All right, I got to go. But so what scares me is I was reading how the top 10% of all wealth in this country accounts for 50% of all discretionary spending.
Yeah.
And now more as far as data has gone back to measure this in the 1940s, stocks make up a larger portion of assets than ever before. So in other words, we've got the top 10% have more stocks as assets than ever. And I fear that, and this isn't a fear that's unique to me, this is not my unique opinion, but we've never been so dependent on the stock market as a gauge for economic health.
Yeah.
And we've never before had so much wealth so highly concentrated at the top. And so if that 10%, as stocks start to drop, that affects that top 10%. And then in turn, the next domino to fall is if they adjust their spending even moderately, it would cause presumably these system-wide shocks. And Citrini, huge shout out to Citrini and this Last Bear Standing, they put out a really, really long, really informative piece, and they're calling it a wealth effect driven slowdown. Yeah, they're
now turn it into a question.
It sounds like you just agree with it, yeah?
Well, yeah, but I wanted your thoughts on it because I think that there's a couple different ways to look at the potential for a recession. Obviously, chief among them is the tariffs and the uncertainty, and then that begets the fear in the stock market, which then leads to these people whose high net worth is directly tied to the performance of stocks. And as that underperforms, they tighten their belts.
Yeah.
And then it's on. They also point out, interestingly, they're asserting that lower income people are actually, and bear with me, I'm not saying that, I'm not making any kind of truth statement here, but they're asserting that they are going to be more shielded from it because they don't own as many assets and stocks. And they point out actually that lower income people have actually been in a recession since around 2021.
I don't know.
in
if
their
I've-
own like bifurcated way, pointing to credit card delinquencies and auto loan delinquencies, buy now, pay later stuff. Hey, everybody, we got to take another quick break to thank another sponsor of the show. It's Factor. Baby, these meals are so good, I can't even begin to describe it to you. I'm lazy, right? But I also want to eat pretty healthy. But I don't always have time to go to the store, get all the ingredients, find a recipe. Oh my gosh, it's exhausting. But with Factor, eating well has never been this easy. You just heat it up and enjoy. It gives me more time to do what I want, like eating more Factor meals. Isn't that right?
I mean, what is the biggest obstacle to eating healthy? No one's got the time to do it.
Nobody's got time.
all right?
Nobody's got the energy. Jeez Louise.
So instead of prepping and cooking indoors, Factor meals arrive fresh and ready to eat, perfect for any active lifestyle. With 45 weekly menu options, you can pick gourmet meals that fit your goals. Choose from Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, Keto, and more. Which one are you?
I alternate. I do the Protein Plus and Keto.
Factor powers your day with satisfying breakfasts, on-the-go lunches, premium dinners, and guilt-free snacks and desserts. It's easy to savor more this spring. Factor meals pack in the flavor and none of the fuss.
That's right, Emil. Get started at factormeals.com/Bays50off and use code Bays50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That's code BAES50off at factormeals.com/Bays50off for 50% off plus free shipping. I still kind of, I'm like, you know what? That's fine. I would rather you do that than incur an overdraft fee. You know? Put your burrito on layaway for 4 months. Interest free? Don't do it.
What
No,
were you
but
gonna
once
say,
you miss
Kyla?
the
Yeah, what were you
payment,
gonna say?
once you miss the payment,
Right,
that's
you're fucked.
really-
You're
yeah.
fucked, yeah.
So it's a misaligned incentive for sure. But yeah, I mean, I think like the concentration of wealth. Have you ever read the book As Gods Among Men?
No.
So it talks about wealth concentration throughout history, like really beginning in the Black Death. So kind of like what happened post Black Death with the really, really, really rich people, and sort of how we've seen this cyclicality of wealth throughout the ages, and how it's just gotten more and more and more concentrated at the top. And what we've seen from the really wealthy people is that they don't really interact with society as much. They don't give back in the same way. Like you still have a Bill Gates type figure who, donates a lot of money. Warren Buffett, I think, has pledged like 99% of his wealth to be donated.
Kenzie Bezos.
Yeah. But like what Jeff Bezos is doing. And so it's interesting to the point of like what the really, really wealthy are doing and like what happens if it does get too concentrated, because there's so much risk in that, especially if we do have a stock market sell off. And so I think that's interesting. So are they saying that the market would drive the economy? Is that how they're?
Yeah, they're saying that normally it's the other way around.
Yeah.
But this time it's the stock market that could actually tip us into a recession,
much
and
wealth
it's just
is-
an Ouroboros. It's just a snail eating its own tail. Snake eating its own tail. Excuse me. And they point out things that the data doesn't show us: people living paycheck to paycheck, working multiple jobs, and then you pointed out that
We do have some-
that people are just dropping out of the labor force.
Why did they say
entirely.
that?
I don't know. I was also culling from it's a massive
Yeah,
article.
yeah.
And that this was really sad to me. The bottom 20% of households now allocate 94% of their spending just to necessities.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's bad.
But what was an interesting divergence is that the top and middle income earners have a higher expectation of unemployment in 2025, whereas lower income workers, their expectation of unemployment has actually decreased for 2025. Again, probably pointing back to that they've already kind of been in a recession since 2021. I don't know how I feel about that. Yeah, what are your thoughts? I know, I just threw a lot at you. If you want to take a break, we can take a break. I guess my follow-up question, as I've put, is there any way, like the wealth divide has gotten so great, is there any viable way to fix this disparity? That's a big question.
No, and As Gods Among Men is like an interesting exploration if people do want to read more about like how wealth operates with really, really wealthy. It's a very interesting book. In terms of fixing the wealth divide, there's a lot of good research papers on that. And a lot of things point back to taxation, which of course is politically very, very unpopular. And I was listening.
Politically unpopular in what sense? That like
You won't get voted in if you
won't get voted in.
if you propose higher taxes.
But higher taxes on who?
Rich.
You won't get voted in if you propose no. Let's say I'm running for president. And I say I'm not going to raise taxes on anyone making over. I think Biden said I'm not going to do it on anyone over 400,000 people. Sorry, on people making under $400,000. But I am going to raise taxes on people who make over that. You think that's a politically unpopular policy? Because I agree. I think the only solution is taxing these people.
So,
Like when you're talking about fixing this wealth gap, this disparity, the only viable solution is taxation.
yeah, absolutely.
And the most frustrating thing is like these guys talking about like the debt and all the national debt, all this stuff. Like, we just don't, how are you going to pay for that? It's like taxing. But right now we have people like, why don't we get rid of the IRS?
Which was Natasha Sarin over at Budget Lab at Yale. They have a great paper on like what happens to our revenue if we got the IRS and we lose like billions.
Yeah,
of
they want to
dollars.
have the external revenue service. But in my mind, if I'm making under $400,000, which I do, most Americans do. Everyone does.
Yeah.
I'm going, good. Raise the taxes and pay for shit. Why don't you knock off some of that debt you're so worried about? Raise revenue.
So there's two interesting here. The first point is how Americans think about wealth. Like in the United States, we've historically had a lot of upward mobility. So Stephanie Stancheva over at Harvard, I feel like I'm like shouting a ton of people out. I can actually send links to all of this stuff.
Great.
So that way,
we'll put it all in the description.
I feel like I'm like virtue signaling a bit. But I'm just trying to like cite my sources,
Of course.
No, I think that's important. I don't think it's yeah.
But Stephanie Stancheva at Harvard has a great paper with a bunch of co-authors about upward mobility and how it's gone down in the United States. But historically, we've had a lot of upward mobility, and so people look at the situation for the rich and they're like, I'm going to be really rich one day. Like, I'm going to be Elon Musk. So I don't want them to raise taxes for rich right now because that's going to be...
Right. It's like it's the Steinbeck thing. Every American's just a disgraced millionaire.
Exactly. Yes. So like that's one part of it for sure. And then the wealthy people do generally tend to kind of control like the corporate side of elections. And so it can get a little bit fuzzy.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Oh, that's certainly true. But I think if someone, if someone was like actually willing to run on some like popular economic policies and, convey the message that we're going to pay for this by taxing rich people, and you're not going to pay a cent more. In fact, the aim is to have you pay less.
It didn't really work for Biden.
He got in office.
Do you
But did he run on that in his first campaign?
Oh, no, but I thought that's what you were implying. But he won.
I don't think he ran.
Nothing
on
really
that,
worked
though.
for Kamala. She had a weird, watered down economic policy that people didn't quite understand.
That thing changed the history of it. There's a lot that went wrong there.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, that's actually this next quote from you. You say, we exist in a state of perpetual half conclusion where nothing is ever fully processed before the next urgent matter demands attention. So I would say that there's something to that effect too, where even if you were to run on such a platform, it would be gone within 15 minutes and on to the next thing, whether it be a culture war thing that the opposition would pull out to throw in your face. I feel like you could run on the most popular platform and you would still run up against pretty tight competition because the other side, the right, has gotten so good. And so, yeah, really, with the Steve Bannon, what does he say? Flood the zone? Flood the zone, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's exhausting. I don't know how you keep up with it anymore. Even if you run on an incredibly popular platform, you would almost have to, what's it called when you get brainwashed and then you have to undo it? Brain dirtying. You got to dirty up those brains again. There's a word for it. My uncle's calling me. That lends itself to another big thing. You talk about how bots are a huge, huge problem.
I don't see, and I don't know if I'm just like not paying attention, but I don't see anybody like kind of talking about the bots.
When you were the one that kind of, I was seeing you talking about it, and I'm like, yeah, that's
I
actually a
know.
much bigger thing than we
Didn't we talk about?
Yeah.
We're kind of like, oh no, everybody's telling the truth all of the time on these platforms.
Or and it's just porn bots mostly. But
Well,
it ain't.
no, it's people in like, you know.
Well, there was that brief moment where Zuck was almost like happy about the fact that he's going to have all these AI creators, AI influencers.
That was weird. But I'm not even talking about those. Like I'm talking about the bots that get in the replies on posts, and they're
Help
like,
control the narrative.
yeah, and they're like, Elon Musk, you're like the coolest guy ever, and you're so smart. And he himself has been brainwashed. I don't know what the opposite word is for what you
Deprogrammed? I don't know.
Deprogrammed.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
But yeah, the bots are, I really think like we'll look back at this moment in history and be like, oh my gosh, like the bots drove this election. It was the media election, but it was 1000% foreign adversary. I sound like a conspiracy theorist, but like foreign adversaries in the replies on Twitter, on TikTok.
I mean, everything makes you sound like we're in such a weird. I mean,
know,
Elon
that's
Musk is
true.
in
That's
Wisconsin
true.
right now offering $1 million, and it ends up going to the director of the College Republicans of Wisconsin or whatever. And you're just like everything. You just sound crazy.
I know.
You can't really talk about this period without. But it's all real. It's not.
Yeah,
you're
it's
not
made
some
it.
crackpot conspiracist.
I think I'm paraphrasing you, but it's made it so that people don't know what's factually true anymore, creating an environment of information exhaustion and our inability to think long term anymore. You touch a lot on time frames and the attention, our ever diminishing attention spans, and you just raise a really good, interesting point that I just don't know how we collectively recover from and rebuild from when our attention spans are so shot and we are so addicted to this everything
so
now thing and so affected by bots that it's overwhelming.
And we're so used to being lied to.
Mm-hmm.
And like Signalgate was last
Jeez.
last Monday. And it feels like another 1,000 years have passed.
Mm-hmm.
And like everybody I talk to, and this is like all part of the Flood the Zone plan, and unfortunately it works quite well.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is like, I'm pretty tired, I'm pretty beat up. I don't really know which way is up or down. And it becomes very difficult to do any sort of like long-term planning. And we're all a bit biased because like it's our job to be absorbed by the news. Like you can definitely, if you get outside of a bubble, I think it's a bit simpler, but it's very interesting for sure. They're masters of that.
I like this other thing that I'm sorry, I'm just spitting your own words back at you.
No, this is great. Somebody reading my newsletter aloud.
Guys, folks, if you don't read Kyla's newsletter, you really you're such a gifted writer.
Oh, thank you.
And not only just your ability to parse really dense topics, but just, I don't know, your way with words, you weave a very compelling tale.
Yeah.
And it's easy to read, and before you know it, you've read through the whole thing.
Oh, great.
It actually kind of did that in as much as you're talking about the dopamine cleanse that you went through, where it's like, I got ideas. I was like, damn, I've sat here and actually read without checking my phone or like stopping to twiddle my thumbs or scratch my ass in like 20 minutes. Holy shit. Anyway, then my back started hurting because I was sitting with really poor posture. Can you help fix that? Can you write an article about that?
So the way that I manage that is like I sit on a stool with no back.
Oh.
And so that way I have to like really good posture. It helps a lot.
I'm
with
sure it
like
does.
general back pain.
I try to do that. But anyway, you say factual economic understanding has been replaced by tribal signaling, which is something that we were just talking about. Conditioning people to accept simplified narratives about economic issues. Boy, does that sound familiar. An accelerated discourse to the point where appropriate timescales for economic analysis has been lost. And Trump himself even kind of said that with how Beijing thinks in terms of centuries.
Yeah. I think in terms of quarters here.
Yeah. God, that's your capitalism at work, bitch. What do you? I don't understand. They rail on this so much, and the West being number one, and now all of a sudden there's this weird unfurling of these ideas that have been traditionally just so hammered into our heads of like capitalism rocks and is impervious to criticism, and yet here they are. Just the people on the right about like him making that statement about we're so focused on the short term. It's like, yeah, that's That's the system we've been told is the best one. And it doesn't seek.
Right. We have this two-party system that kind of tries to dismantle whatever the other one wants to do every 4 years. While they have a one-party system, and if you want to criticize that, you're welcome to. But they clearly have a vision for the country that they're trying to enact and put in place. And
hey, everybody! We want to take one last quick break to talk a little bit about your dirty, dirty computer. Do you have a Mac? Oh, baby. You better get yourself some Clean My Mac, because let me tell you.
Look, I know a bunch of you are out there. You got storage issues. You want to add something. You want to add an app, and you're going, "What? I'm low on storage. What the heck are you talking about?" And so you click the thing. It takes you into your settings. All of a sudden, you're like, "What are all these different colored bars?" Well, in comes Clean My Mac.
Clean My Mac has been around since 2008. And the new Clean My Mac represents the evolution from a cleaning-centric to a care-centric Mac app. Experience all the optimization essentials with a sleek, user-friendly dashboard. You'll have complete control over how your Mac feels and performs at the moment.
Clutter. Dive into your downloads and quickly eliminate duplicates to simplify your digital life.
That sounds nice.
Clean up. Remove system cache, development junk, and unnecessary files that can take up space and prevent essential updates. Moonlock anti-malware engine. When it comes to viruses, your Mac is at risk too. With just a click, the anti-malware tools scan and remove viruses, ensuring your Mac remains threat-free. The Assistant and Menu app. No need to constantly open the app. Tackle battery drains and overheating with helpful tips and instant fixes.
Man, my battery life is terrible. Thank God I got this.
I know you're gonna be boosted with this.
So keep your Mac tidy with Clean My Mac, folks. Try it 7 days for free and use our code BAYS20 for 20% off. That's 7 days free with code BAYS20 for 20% off.
Yeah, no, I mean, the two-party system is probably quite an issue. It'd be better if we had some sort of parliament, I think, where there could be like at least some level of debate. But now it becomes so ideological and it's so easy to sell a simple narrative and tell people things that just aren't true.
Yeah, like tariffs are paid for by other countries, for example.
That's a tough one. Yeah, that's a really tough one because like we have data on it, and I know data like doesn't matter, but it's really difficult to get people to realize that, like that's ultimately a tax on consumers. And broad-based tariffs are never a good idea. And like you can look at what happened in the Great Depression where we had tariffs enacted, and then something called the Kindleberger spiral happened where we had tariffs and then people retaliated, so we did more tariffs, and then they retaliated again, and then you had the economy just do this spiral down. Yeah, so it really worsened the Great Depression to have a tariff period. And Trump is always praising McKinley, but McKinley came out of that era and was like, tariffs are actually not great.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of interesting how even he falls prey to not understanding the full scope of his story.
When you're thinking about people not being able to reckon with data and all that stuff, have you engaged with any of the data around the illiteracy rates in the country, and maybe that we all just can't read, and that's part of the problem?
No, I mean,
it's truly, yeah.
Yeah, I travel I travel a lot right now. I've been traveling since the book came out, and I go to a lot of universities and I go to a lot of conferences, and I've been on the road since May 2024. And like people will tell me this, like professors about their students. They're like, I love my students, but like they can't read books. And
well, it's adults too. I mean, that's the thing.
Too.
There was, because there's so many things get circulated on Twitter, and there was this stat. I wish I had it. Basically about the literacy rates in this country, and I was going, that just cannot be true. And I started Googling it, and it is very true. The literacy rates in this country are shockingly.
And you can't remember the number?
No, if you can, sounds like what an illiterate would say.
If you can maybe Google the literacy rates in the country, maybe we can find.
I mean, I know that we're like number 32 in the world,
and
for education.
Honestly, since I've seen it, I've kind of been like, you know what, that makes so much sense.
On average, 79% of U.S. adults nationwide are literate in 2024.
Maybe the 54% of adults have a literacy below a 6th grade level.
Yeah, that's
concerning.
Wild.
Because 6th graders are famously stupid.
I mean, they're
dumb as hell.
Unbelievable. Look at that. Low levels of literacy cost the U.S. up to $2.2 trillion per year.
Oh my God. Jesus.
But yeah, you had a funny, I think it was either a tweet or a comment or something you posted on.
Making fun of people who can't read.
No, it basically just said something like, if you're going to comment on the article,
Oh God.
please read the article.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that every time I share an article, people, understandably, they were
Sure.
quite long. They don't read them. But then they're like, "You're really stupid and wrong." And then like what they're picking a fight about is something I said.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Why didn't you say that?" And I was like, and I screenshot quite a bit, and
Yeah.
I'm like, "Here."
I always love that. When I see that, I'm just like, I don't know how you have the patience. I'd be on there. I mean, I get pretty damn impatient on the internet. I should stop doing that. Stop being cussing at people, especially like Chamath, Palihapitiya. I'm like, fuck you, dude. You
lame.
suck. But so you call tariffs a tax on American consumers, an affront to allies, and a gamble that there won't be retaliation. And I think the gambling thing for me is a perfect encapsulation of just, it's like not a microcosm, but it's like, with a lot of youth feeling so hopeless, a lot of them have turned to things like gambling because they feel abandoned by the systems that we've been raised to believe in. And we're just all kind of, especially young people, are all kind of collectively realizing that it's all bunk. And
I
it's
think
all
that's
fucking
a
bullshit.
good point that we haven't really talked about. That it feels like when you kind of move around on the internet and see people talking about this stuff, there's so much resentment baked into so much of their communication online. They're so, angry at just, either the other side. It's just, it's a lot like your content thing. It's just like, well, that's that person who wronged me. They're dead to me.
Right. And just Trump, when you look into what this administration's goal is, it really does feel like a giant gamble with like a 9-leg parlay that every single one needs to hit in order for this to succeed. Would you agree with that? That it's just one big fucking gamble?
Yeah, I mean the Mar-a-Lago Accord. I wrote about that in a newsletter as well. Like kind of walking through, like they want to devalue the dollar, and then
Right.
they want to do tariffs, and tariffs usually strengthen a currency, and so it's kind of guys like
that's immediately.
it can be very straightforward. And then like the way that they want to deal with tariff strengthening currencies and have the dollar still be devalued is have perpetual dollar bonds, which would really require people to believe in the infinite power of the United States because it's a perpetual dollar bond. So you're basically like, yeah, I'll give you my money, United States, and forever and always.
Mhm.
You get paid a little bit of interest on that. And so it's a massive gamble. And like there was a news hit today talking about how China, South Korea, and Japan are teaming up to have a trade plan to deal with these tariffs. And Canada has like totally, understandably freaked out. Mark Carney, who is their prime minister, he was like, we're not dealing with the United States anymore. And then him and Trump had a call, and I guess but
I think we're not dealing with the United States anymore is going to be a popular sentiment. I mean,
I don't blame them.
Yeah.
It's so sad because I really love the United States. Like I think it's such a beautiful country, and it stood for so many important things, like being able to move here. Like that's my grandparents moved here, and they made lives for themselves, and they used to kind of it was tough still, but like that was kind of what it was, and it just feels like we're turning our back on what the country is.
Yeah. What do you think exactly? Because a lot of people have articulated what they believe the Trump administration's goal is right now with all of this tariff shit. I mean, obviously, we know now that they say it's fentanyl, and I'm sure that plays a role. But,
And borders.
Yeah, and border security, but that just being a means to the end of being able to implement it without the need of Congress. But a lot of people have been talking about the refinancing of debt coming up, and that being a thing that they're trying to force equities down so that bonds look more attractive, so that bonds go up, thereby dropping rates, thereby making it so that our refinancing of debt is a lot more tenable. Does that sound about right to you?
Oh yeah, that's kind of part of the
Yeah.
They want yields down on the 10-year, and crashing the economy is certainly one way to do that. I mean, I think it's so hard to really like wrap your mind around exactly what's going on. they have expressed this like economic detox period being important to their underlying goals. And so I would take that quite seriously. And they do seem to want to refinance at a lower rate, which is understandable. Like interest payments are a huge part of our issue right now because rates have been quite high because inflation hasn't gone down at the rate that we thought it would. And so it all makes sense in theory, but again, we have this disconnect to practice, right?
You have the disconnect in practice, and then you have the strongman, crossed arms, isolationist
I know.
attitude that's only going to exacerbate the existing. Like, even if you were to be Mr. Nice Guy and do these tariffs and stuff, it's like you're just adding so much insult to injury that in a way that's like, how do these people not recognize what they're doing as they're doing it and just tearing it all for what? Like, to what end?
Maybe privatization, getting all their buddies to own, the
National parks.
infrastructure of the, the entire American.
But it's like it's working, right? Like we've spent how long? An hour just talking about their plans and theorizing. And I've spent the better part of since his inauguration theorizing and planning and reading other people theorizing. And so like they have completely captured attention, like 100%.
Oh yeah, and we haven't even like covered so many things.
Yeah,
that we're
like the real
missing.
meat of the economy. Like, what does the labor market look like? What's AI gonna do? Right? Like, there's so many questions beyond the Trump administration. But it makes it. I was talking to somebody today, where we were talking about like how it's very difficult to get your head around anything else because the news is so all encompassing, and it almost feels like a soothing thing to check the news because you're like, I'm informed, like I'm going to be prepared when this bad thing happens. But there's so many other things going on that could be even potentially like more catastrophic than I think the policies being enacted right now are quite concerning. But AI, for example, that could be even worse.
Yeah. You had pointed out actually Argentina as a good example of what could potentially happen here because Argentina was like the number one economy in the early 1900s, and now they're number 3, and now they're like the 70th, which is, I mean, do you think that could potentially happen here where we just suddenly really fall down the ranks?
I think that there's like, so the United States is very lucky because we have the reserve currency, right? Like the dollar is reserve currency. So people want to do trade with us because they want dollars. And we are as you mentioned earlier, like the stock market hub. We have a lot of big companies, like where a lot of wealth is. We have a lot of rich people. And so there's a lot of incentives to trade with the US. And so it's a little bit of a different situation than Argentina. But they kind of had that same like isolationist stance where they were like, we can just do things all ourselves. And we certainly don't need other countries. And it never works out quite well.
Right. We live in a society, as George Costanza would say. We live in a global society. You got to be able to play with the other kids in the sandbox. I like what you went on to say about all of this stuff. Sorry, I have to say I like what you say. You said this path, the path of what the Trump administration is presumably doing, getting yields down, stocks go down, the economy slows, debt gets refinanced, the Fed cuts rates, and then everything just explodes. That's their kind of plan. And they've kind of forecasted it by saying, oh, we're going to have a detox period. And also they're kind of laying the ground by saying this actually isn't Trump's economy yet. Trump's economy is 6 to 12 months down the line.
Yeah, Axios published.
We're still in Biden's economy.
Right. But you say this path assumes a lot of the American public and a lot of goodwill from others. We're moving away from stability as a primary goal toward volatility as a tool for transformation, a high-stakes experiment with our economic future. And I think that's really fucking astute. And like I then say, it's a sign of the times. It's one big gamble. In as much as people are going all in on fucking Fartcoin and Dogecoin, America's just going all in on this one extremely risky thing that could pay off. But so far, it's just a fucking mess. We're Adam Sandler in the what's the Big Diamond movie? Great Big Diamond
Big
Lover?
Daddy.
No.
Big Diamond?
Big Diamond. Uncut Gems.
Oh.
Did you ever see?
Ben, what is going on?
I'm fucking tweaking out, man. All these tariffs and shit. Again, my tie is very tight. So do you think it can work to be more isolationist, or is it just a total backward ass thinking?
It's not what I think works. Like free trade is really the goal for an
Mhm.
economy. It's like, can you trade with other countries? You can do things more efficiently. And then of course it gets very complicated because obviously like we want other countries to have solid labor laws. Like China has had a lot of problems with that. And we've gotten a lot of cheap goods from China that we wouldn't be able to produce here because we pay our workers a living wage most of the time. Whereas China, they don't. And so like that's also something that we have to take into consideration. It's like, okay, we can do free trade, but other countries should probably treat their workers well. They should. And so I definitely believe in free trade as a concept. And I think it's like one thing that has led the United States to be such a powerhouse is we did that and we allowed for it. And we are very physically in a good location, right? Like we are pretty protected. We have Canada and we have Mexico, and those have been our buddies. Some would argue that like Mexico needs to tighten the border. We need to tighten the southern border. And but like they've been our buddies, and we have ocean on either side that has prevented some type of invasion. And we've been able to trade with both Canada and Mexico, and that's been massively beneficial. Like we get a lot of natural resources from Canada, we get a lot of crops from Mexico, and so it's worked. And I think people are like it becomes psychological, where I think Trump thinks that the United States should just be the big guy on the block, and other countries should pay a price to have like tariffs are really like a lot. What's interesting about tariffs, and I promise I'll like wrap around to a point in a second, but like what's interesting about tariffs is that we do talk about them in terms of reshoring manufacturing. But when you look at the Mar-a-Lago Accord, there's also an element of national security. Like other countries have not been theoretically paying enough for the United States military to be protecting them. And so they also
They never say thank you.
Thank you.
You know,
It's a great point.
Sorry,
it's a
I don't
great,
wanna
no, it's a
continue.
really good point. Especially when that person did say thank you quite a bit.
Right.
But it goes back to the point of too, like fact versus lies. And so yeah, the free trade is important there, and tariffs could be a form of like trying to instigate some form of a national security tax or an international security tax as well. But yeah, I mean, free trade that's the thing they teach you in economics class. Like it's like macroeconomics 101. Free trade creates wealth.
Yeah, you onshoring seems to be this notion that not only can it be done, it can be done efficiently, cheaply, whatever, and it'll be done in a flash. And it just I'm always surprised when I see that because it takes so much time. And not everything should I agree with it to a certain extent
Yeah,
of
sure.
onshoring stuff. We all can, but you point out that there are certain things that other countries just do better,
Yeah.
and that we can never compete on in a reasonable way. Also, I believe you pointed out that forcing everything onshore risks creating inflationary problems. You've got export difficulties, higher costs throughout supply chains. Supply chains and factories are complicated. Small businesses rely on imports.
So what's funny about the reshoring manufacturing is it assumes we have somewhere to export everything to.
Yeah,
that we
too.
haven't like made everybody so mad at us that they don't want to
Yeah.
trade. I think that's kind of a funny one. Not funny like haha, but funny like
No, it's funny, haha, too.
Well, it's hard to laugh
There
at
is
this
like
stuff.
there is like some kind of cosmically funny thing.
Yeah.
Like if you were floating in the stars watching America, you'd go like,
Yeah.
this is kind of funny. Like, and this is like the last outgrowth of
Yeah,
the ugly American.
it's the last level of the American experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
and it's funny that it's
but living
with a
through
whimper.
it, not so funny.
Well,
Yeah.
it's like that Gandalf quote to Frodo, where it's like,
I'm not super familiar with.
Yeah,
Lord of the
I'm
Rings,
not
but
because
hit
I'm
me.
not a huge nerd. So
No, I don't.
but
I
go
don't-
on, tell
it's
us.
not-
What is it?
I don't think.
I think
What does Gandalf say to Frodo?
he says like I wish that we didn't have to live through hard times. Essentially,
Hmm.
yeah.
I
Like
thought
like
I thought it was gonna be like you gotta destroy this ring, dude.
wait, do you not like Lord of the Rings?
I haven't seen it. I saw the first one.
Oh, you
And I was
should
really
see
turned
it.
off by how weird the old man was when he gets corrupted. He's like, I should have this ring.
Oh, Smeagol?
I must be.
No,
I don't know.
Smeagol's not. You don't see him.
No, not
transform in the
Smeagol.
first
He was
one.
the older guy who was like, he's literally looking at it and he goes, why shouldn't I have this? Who is he? Bilbo?
Bilbo. Yeah,
Bilbo.
yeah.
Bilbo Baggins.
Yeah.
Man, what a guy.
But-
Everybody's
but-
talking about Bilbo.
No, that movie is like the movies are pretty informative, right?
Yeah.
Like the whole concept, or the books too. What the movies are based on, but like the ring itself is sort of this explanation of like wealth and power and how it can corrupt.
Mm.
And I think that's just like really the American experiment. Like, can you put a bunch of wealthy people in a country together, and will they distribute wealth fairly? Will they not try to take power? Like, will we have some sort of oligarchy at the end? Like,
Spoiler alert. No, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's fiction is the best explainer
Right.
of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, to your point, I feel like I don't know. I feel very naive. I think I thought, I just kind of thought, yeah, hard times were behind us, and like, sure, we were gonna have some
Yeah.
hard times, but I just kind of thought we were gonna
Same.
I thought we were gonna like
Yeah.
just keep inching up and
Yeah.
bringing more people out of poverty, and like the real good times were just around the corner, and I feel very silly being like, oh wow, it can get really bad.
I know.
Well, you were saying that there may be a saving grace in the form of artificial intelligence, right? Was that one thing that you were saying could be a kind of silver lining?
It could either be one or the other.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Can you explain that? I'm not familiar with this.
With AI.
No, I'm not familiar with your perspective on how it could be a silver lining. Or
Well, I mean, like if AI becomes very real, theoretically the government would have to respond in some way.
when you say very real, do you mean something like AGI comes to fruition? Okay.
And so if that ends up happening, like this sort of stuff could probably see like sitting and talking about tariffs, because then AI does that for you, right? Like it can conduct international trade. And this is far away, I think. But it could be like a massive complement to the economy, or it could be a detractor. Like there's so many movies and books talking about, Blade Runner, for example, or The Matrix, where the AI takes over, like computers take over. So I think we're kind of at a fork in the road, really, where we've seen a lot of progress in AI to the point where it could, I think, reach that AGI level. But we've also maybe seen it being controlled by people who might not have the best incentives.
Yeah.
But safe.
Do you trust Sam Altman?
I don't know him.
Sure, but do you
Yeah.
trust him as a popular figure and a leader in the artificial intelligence space,
I think
based on what you know?
I think what I've heard about him from people who do know him
Mhm.
is that he's transactional.
Mhm.
And so he's a businessman, right? And they business. That's also a funny thing. A lot of people say that the United States should be run like a business.
That's-
That's the
yeah,
most
that's
asinine
like
thing. That's what drives me insane.
that's a tough
Yeah.
one. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a really.
That's why they want to privatize everything. Because if it's not making money as a service, we should privatize
It's
Like the
it.
just like
post
a
office.
fundamental misunderstanding, or maybe it's not a misunderstanding. Maybe it's just a fundamental disagreement. Maybe
Mhm.
maybe that's how they think it. And I think, yeah, that's the core of it. I think this is like a genuine disagreement about people's idea of what government should do. Like, do you think government should provide services for citizens, make their lives easier, act as a shield against the horrors that can happen from private institutions? Or do you think it should just be, I don't know, the military and roads? And it's so, yeah, I keep thinking they're like misunderstanding, but they're not. They just, I think, very disagree.
Well, business people always see a business problem, right? And so we have a lot of business people. It's very interesting. I think the House of Representatives is over half lawyers. And so like lawyers are going to think about things a little bit differently, and like they kind of see things in terms of cases. And there's a lot of you're a lawyer. So you actually how would you think about that? Like as half of the, like, is that something that you're like, that makes sense? Or
I think that kind of makes sense
Yeah.
that lawyers end up in government. I think.
do you think it's good?
Lawyers are generally bad people, but I don't think it's good or bad. I feel neutral towards that. I think I feel much more. I think there are much worse professions that people could go into politics for. I think, like, for example, I mean, they're not necessarily turning into politicians. This is more of like them having lobbying arms. But I think I'm much more disturbed by things like Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, all of these people, Elon Musk, being all-knowing. It's a very strange thing that because they've achieved some success with business or tech or whatever, that they have an answer for how to run education. They have an answer for how to run healthcare, and all of these guys get into it. Oops, sorry about that.
Christ.
All these guys get into it, right? Bill Gates has tried his hand at healthcare, education, whatever. All varying degrees of failure. And
yeah, especially his marriage.
It's such a strange thing. No one gets a very successful teacher and is like, maybe we should hear her thoughts on how the tech industry runs. Okay, she's risen through the ranks. She's become a principal or a superintendent. Why don't we let her make all the decisions about how healthcare is run all of a sudden? If anything, she probably has some great ideas and should be included on some of how we do education and stuff like that. But that I find way more disturbing than, lawyers becoming lawmakers. They definitely are going to have a baseline understanding of laws. But yeah, that stuff worries me way more.
Yeah. Do you ever DOGE has been dominating headlines, and I recently was thinking that it's really upsetting that we're all just kind of falling victim to one of the most historical displays of grandiosity and narcissism in the form of Elon Musk. True to just his character, that he's got to insert himself at the center of every big event, conundrum, be it the Thai kids stuck in the cave, COVID, the machines during COVID, like we'll handle that, rescuing the astronauts. This seems to just be the final thing of like, I can solve it. Elon Musk to the rescue. And I don't know. I just find it really exhausting, but equally fascinating that we all just have to sit here and let it happen. That this malignant narcissist has to make himself the savior when he has zero experience, just because he's ran companies and has been able to do whatever magic needs to be done on balance sheets at Tesla to keep it afloat, that he should automatically be able to correct the course and fix the American balance sheet by treating it like some kind of corporation. There's no question at the end of that. I was going to say, like, don't you think that's fucked up? I'm like Chris Farley in that SNL sketch. Hey, everybody.
That was cool.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
In your article?
Yeah. Well, because you went on to say treating economic suffering as a form of tough they're treating economic suffering as a form of tough medicine rather than a policy failure. And it's just really fucked up that they're also giving us such conflicting takes. It's at once they're saying, oh, we're going to go through this detox period, it's going to be very difficult, but also we're about to unleash the most tremendous period of economic growth you've ever seen. And then they're treating it like a corporation when they have no business doing so, and they're toying with millions of American lives and money and services that I just don't think that they fully understand what they're fucking doing.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
I am curious, like, how you, I think probably a lot of people are just like worried right now, right? Worried about the future in a way that I'm sure everyone's always worried about the future, but maybe worried in a future in a different way. I mean, in all aspects. Economically, I have friends who are on visas who now are like, well, Jesus Christ, I was scheduled to go home. I'm a little bit nervous to come back. Things have changed very quickly. I'm wondering, and if it's too difficult to answer, you don't have to. I'm just wondering if you have any kind of like inkling on how this turns out. Like, are we just going to be unrecognizable? Is it? I think there's a lot of people who maybe freak out, like say, oh, you've got Trump derangement syndrome. Are people just freaking out and we're going to look maybe fundamentally similar, or is it just completely unknowable?
I think there's an element of it unknowable. But what we're seeing with the Trump presidency is a mass protest, right? So people voted him in because he promised the 2018 economy, but also because they were very sick of the status quo.
Mm-hmm.
And so the underlying status quo really hasn't changed. Like, the Democrats are still doing all the same old stuff. And so I think there has to be some fundamental change, or else we're just going to kind of keep on repeating this cycle until the thing actually does break. So I don't know how to predict the future,
Right.
but I think this is, it makes sense to me that we're here, and it makes sense to me that things are falling apart in the way that they are.
Yeah, I think I would count myself among the people who are worried about the future, and it's definitely a strange thing where, I mean, I sometimes feel worried even talking about it because I don't want to add to like the pessimism vibe or be like a there's definitely a it's all over corner of the internet. I don't want to believe that. I don't want to sell that to people, but sometimes it's hard not to get sucked into it, right? But I'm like, okay, but where do I place my hope? And like you said, the Democrats aren't really changing their tune that much. There's some definite excitement around some progressives like the Bernie Sanders of the world, the AOCs who are joining him on his like fighting oligarchy tour. Tim Walz.
Yeah, he's fiery.
But I think it's hard to, the joke has always been that every 4 years, like people hoping for a better thing are basically Charlie Brown, and the Democrats are, is it Lucy with the football?
Yeah.
And they're gonna hold the football for you and be like, we are promising XYZ, we're gonna do it different, and then they yank the football from you. And it seems like at this point, it's hard for me to not feel like it's a little too late. As we watch some things just get irreparably harmed.
Well, trust too.
For sure. And that's part of the thing. You see Tim Walz going on all these stops, and you're like, yeah, but then you're like, wait, it was just a few months ago. He was kind of, refusing to push any of these.
He was kind of containered by.
Yeah. But who's to say, that's kind of the problem, right? Democrats are always at their, or like progressives are always at their most like fervent and rabid when it's safest to do so. Right now, it's very safe to rail against the establishment of the Democratic Party. And I have a hard time placing hope in that, like, they will be able to like popularly take back.
Well, it's a pendulum.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think like what has happened with Trump's interesting because like he is that father figure, and people are like, he was a successful businessman. And
He was able to accomplish so much.
6 bankruptcies later. But I think like that kind of complicates stuff. And so you almost need like Wario to Trump, right? Like,
Sure.
So I think that it would be like a Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
No.
Or somebody who's
Let her
like
fucking go on. So Dwayne's gonna do it.
Somebody from outside, I think, really has to come in.
I'd love to see him choke slam Trump.
Or like Mark Cuban has floated him. Guys, I'm not saying
No,
they're the
I know.
best
I'm not
choices.
blaming you.
I'm just saying.
I think you're not wrong. I'm just like,
I think if you
God,
look
did
at
we
the
do this?
situation, it has to be some sort of celebrity.
Yeah.
Because that is the only way to your point earlier, Ben. Like you have to be out there all of the time. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has, made a name for himself most recently with his little Jingle Bells.
A lot of people,
Oh yeah, he most recently definitely made a name for himself with his little jingle.
Did you see a lot of people were pushing Stephen A. Smith for a while?
Yeah, I did see that. Yeah.
That'd be fun.
I
mean,
so is that where you're placing? If you are placing hope anywhere, is it in a figure like that, or do you have any other
Any other
things that
celebs?
might
Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise.
Even outside of all that, just anywhere that you might be like, you know what, maybe that is our way out of this mess.
Well, I think so if people do read my newsletter, they know I get like a little philosophical sometimes. And I do believe that like the spirit of a human is quite powerful. And like, we've sort of been in a lot of situations where it's been pretty untenable before, right? And there's always been the rise and the fall of an empire. And I think now what we're seeing is very similar to 16th century Spain, where we had a very rich country. Spain was like top dog during that time, had so much silver because they were trading with Mexico, and they owned a bunch of colonies in the Americas. They just like sat on their laurels. And they didn't learn from that lesson. And so there was massive brain drain. The silver just stopped coming. And bureaucracy really became a big issue. So I think like we can learn from things like that and continue forward, but we have to be able to like get up off of the laurels and realize like American exceptionalism is not guaranteed.
Yeah.
And so I think that's like where it's not necessarily hopeful. That's probably the wrong word for it. I think there's a path out.
Yeah.
And it's just that realization, which is very difficult and very abstract. But
Yeah, I think you're right. And people kind of realizing that it's not going to, maybe no one's coming to save us and we are going to save us.
Of course not.
And
Yeah.
everyone, needs to get up off their laurels.
one
It
is
is
ever
easy to
save
sit
you.
back and be like, oh, who will do it? And
I'll
I
do
guess
it. I'll do
the
it.
answer is just that
I'll do that shit.
actually us, unfortunately.
No, me. I'll do
Yeah.
it.
I'm sure you will.
I'll do it.
How would
Do it.
you? What would be your first step?
I don't know. Jeez.
You don't
Way
even
to
have
put
a
me on the
first-
spot, Kyla. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how
Well,
anything works, which is what I was going to bring into my next thing. And you say we're seeing a systematic devaluation of institutional knowledge in favor of some form of misguided intuition with some quite far-reaching executive power. And I think that that's pertinent to what we're talking about, that we're all just kind of collectively realizing, I think, that holy shit, we've had so much blind trust in these institutions and the people in power, but perhaps they don't really know as much as we have given them. Did you see Grimes tweet about this, actually? I thought that was very eye-opening. Grimes, Elon Musk's ex-wife,
I'm
ex-girlfriend, just tweeted that she realized that
Basketball is a lot like.
No, it wasn't that. It wasn't that. That was good.
Did you
though.
see that?
She said, increasingly, I discover with looming horror that we have no idea what's going on, and the civilization we all assume is a given is completely new and hardly stress tested, and there's no Illuminati, which is actually worse because no one has any idea what's going on.
That's funny.
I'd feel more comfortable if there was an evil Machiavellian plan, but no, actually, we don't even really know history, really. And I think that that's especially pertinent given how close she's been to such tremendous power that she might have witnessed it firsthand and is kind of.
Yeah, she's been quite honest, I think, about her relationship with Elon and what she's learned. And
Oh, man.
but no, I think that's true. It's almost, I think people like think of things like the Illuminati as like they don't.
Wait, can you pull the tweet back up?
Sure.
Because so is she's speaking solely about this current administration?
I think she's just talking about generally nobody knows what the fuck is going on.
Read it to me again.
Increasingly, I discover with looming horror that we have no idea what's going on, and the civilization we all assume is a given is completely new and hardly stress tested, and there's no Illuminati, which is actually worse because no one has any idea what's going on.
Huh.
She's just saying that we're just a bunch of fucking dumb children.
I think because I don't want to misinterpret her, but I'm kind of convinced that like we had a pretty good thing. I think we didn't do enough to like bolster American institutions and make sure we
got hollowed out.
impacted people's lives and really brought everyone up as this as this wealth exploded and we became the wealthiest country in the history of the world, and our wealth inequality ate us alive, and we turned into freaks. I think. Yeah, and we chose to. We're choosing to like dismantle a system that could have provided for people.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good transition to the last thing that I wanted to talk about with you is just the human cost of all of this in the next generation. We've talked about the apathy among young people, which is prevalent with the massive rise in gambling and meme coin trading and crypto and all of that stuff, and how part of Trump's appeal is not necessarily that he's right-leaning, but that just fucking everything up in the form of voting for him is just a sort of form of revenge for many young voters. Yeah. And I just wonder if you could speak to that at all. And like how you feel also, because I'm sure you feel a certain degree of apathy and despair, but obviously you're old enough to not turn it into just like, well, fuck it, I'm gonna vote for this guy then.
No, a lot of people drove this. Yeah, we really saw it in under 24s. David Shore of Blue Rivers Research has a pretty good, called an autopsy of the 2024 election, where you saw young, of course, men specifically, not of course like men, but I think we all know that young men kind of drove the Trump vote, especially the 2020 to 2024 group. In terms of sort of the apathy, it goes to your point, Emil, about wealth inequality, right? Like a lot of people have realized that the system is not, it's just not there. And it's so sad because we're the richest country in the world and it should be. And so they're turning to things like meme coins and gambling and taking on a bunch of risk, having elements of financial nihilism in a way to try and like mitigate all of that.
Yeah, and just how sad it is that social media and the internet have just kind of gigafried everybody's brains. I really like this quote from Kate Wagner that you Phone World.
Oh yeah,
The Phone World thing.
great article.
Yeah,
Great
locking
article.
us in an eternal present. The constant storm of hot takes saps our capacity for nuance, making it easier for political actors to weaponize half truths and reinforce distrust any meaningful governance. And that sounds so familiar. It really is. Sorry, I don't mean to turn it into a depressing thing. I mean, as you said, the pain of economic insecurity has to go somewhere, and if it can't be channeled into meaningful work or stable institutions, it festers into alienation or extremes.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing about pain. Like it always has to have a home. Like it never just floats away. Like you kind of resolve it over time, but that's because you allocate the pain toward new friendships. Like if you or like figuring out a new hobby. But if you have like so much economic pain, you're gonna revolt. And we had this like quiet rebellion in the form of voting for Trump. And the Biden economy had its flaws for sure. Pulling back on rent forbearance a bit too early, probably never solving the student loan debt thing and really letting a lot of people down with that. And now student loan debt is coming back and it's going to knock 170 points off people's credit card scores. And that's going to create a little economic calamity within itself. But the Biden economy, it really fell into the arms of manufacturing, like the CHIPS Act, the IRA. It was very useful for those. But to your point, Emil, like he didn't do a lot for the average consumer. There was an article by Kate Arnoff called Pool Party Progressivism, where she talked about like you have to have pool parties for people. Like you have to give them something really nice and like have really nice parks and all like really nice sidewalks. And that's sort of the thing that I hope America figures out is there has been like a lot of bureaucracy, and the way that the Trump administration has deemed to solve this is by taking a hammer to it. The Biden economy had good rails around it, but internally too.
Yeah, I mean, I think like what you're talking, like with some of those needs for bold things during the Biden administration, I think the most frustrating thing watching the Trump administration, I've said it on the show where, I don't, I agree with the substance, but watching him just kind of try to do as he pleases, I think every time, it brings to mind the Hillary Clinton quote. I think it was 2016 when she's talking about like, oh, you guys just want ponies and rainbows or whatever. But if someone with like trying to push through broadly popular policies is just like, I don't care, we're pushing it through. For example, you brought up the student loan thing. If Biden could have had the, political will to be like, we're just going to cancel it, wipe everyone's accounts, we'll deal with the courts later. They're not going to be able to claw back everyone's money. And all of a sudden you can just do, or go much broader and use the actual policies like the Higher Education Act to make sure you have the authority to do these things. They went about it in the most like kind of feckless way, and they couldn't get a single thing done, like something like big they could hang their hat on like that. And so it's really frustrating to see someone be like, no, I took power and I'm going to use it.
Yeah.
When for so long we've been told like, if we get power, we actually can't do that much.
Yeah.
I think part of the problem is that the right has gotten so good at controlling narratives and making it all about culture war bullshit.
there are many instances we can point to in history when we've had the power.
Of
Not
course.
we, but like the broad Democratic Party,
No, I agree.
and did not deliver. And that just feeds into what we're talking about when
Right.
there's people going, but how am I supposed to believe in you?
hmm
You don't you don't do it when you have the power. And if we want people to, I don't know how we're going to convince people.
Well,
at
you
this
talk
point.
about education reform and digital literacy as being some of the only tools we have at our disposal in combating these myriad problems. I mean, do you think that that's even possible at this point? Yeah? Oh, well, that's good.
Why
Okay.
wouldn't it be?
I don't know, because the whole education department getting gutted, and how do you collectively, I don't know, inform people when misinformation is at all-time highs?
I think that it's always possible, right, to do some element of education. But I think we're gonna have to. And there's a big difference between wanting to do something and needing. Like if we don't get this figured out, we will end up like Wall-E, right? I'm serious.
It's not what I was expecting you to say, but totally.
Why wouldn't we?
Yeah.
Right? Like where the screens control people.
Yeah.
And they just like scooter around. You already see it. It's crazy. Like I sound like an old man, but like walking around with my dog, I've seen so many people just walk right into trees or signs
Mhm.
because their phone, right? Like tech neck. And so I think we're gonna.
Technic. That's good. I like that.
No, it's a real symptom. Look
Yeah.
at the picture of it.
No, I've seen it. It's depressing.
But to the point of like, is it possible?
Yeah.
Like once people do see a real need, I think there will be some force around it. Will it be implemented in the correct way is a different question. Politics is, as we've talked about throughout the show, is quite complicated. But yeah, I think we just got to figure out how to educate on it. Like it's such a new thing. To Grimes's point about like civilization is new, technology is even newer. We really only had it in this form for like 20 years. Right?
Right.
Wait, can I add, with your old man take? I do just kind of, because we were talking about this a little bit, and I have this fear of with AI and everything, and just kind of social media and the cheap engagement and stuff. It just kind of. Do you worry about people kind of like losing the satisfaction of, I don't know how else to put this, but like almost labor, like the fruits of their own labor, being able to
Draw a picture?
draw a picture, produce art, produce
Sure.
music, produce anything. And like when I say labor, I don't mean like your job that you clock in to go do, but like I'm worried like we're building a generation. When you talk about Wall-E, a generation of people who just like, yeah, put me in the scooter. I don't really identify with like the satisfaction of producing any kind of thing.
Yeah.
And do you think there will be any kind of like at least movement to be like, hey, wait, working with your hands and like creating something is good?
Well, real fast, a big thing that you've talked about in all your writing recently has been we need to reestablish our relationship with time.
Yeah. I was actually in a big debate about this a few days ago.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Kind of like what is art? Because there is this big AI thing where on Twitter where people were Studio Ghibli-ing their families and like themselves. And you know, the creator of Studio Ghibli does not like AI.
Mhm.
He's called it an insult to life itself. And so a lot of people were like, oh, this is making art accessible and beautiful and wonderful. And it becomes very difficult to delineate what art actually is in that environment and like is applying essentially a Snapchat filter to your family art. And I think the way that I think about art is once we lose touch with nature, we lose touch with art. And that's what I really worry about with people is like if they don't go outside or like be around the trees or get away from the phones, you do get just consumed by a world that isn't around you. Like you're just in an alternate reality all the time. And so you can still get inspired to make art like based on what you see in the internet. But it might detract from the impetus to do so. And
Right.
so I worry that like, yeah, once we lose touch with nature, we lose touch with art along the way.
You're not leaving your house. You're not falling in love with people. And that's all
Well,
the
you
best
are,
art.
but it's like online bots, right? And that's like a whole other podcast topic about the demographic crisis.
Well, so I'd like to leave this on a positive note.
Sure,
And
yeah.
ask you a simple question. Kyla, what are you positive about right now? Not that you're a negative Nancy, but I know
Do you
that
feel
we've-
like I am?
No, but I feel like
am.
we have no choice but to be
Realistic, I
really,
guess?
realistic. And I try to be an optimist about things, and I just wonder if you have any, just to end it on a positive note, if there's anything that in particular that is there a silver lining that you see in all of this? If what kind of hope you have for the future of the country, the future of the youth, whatever.
Yeah. So my writing is always a reflection of what I'm trying to grapple with. And so it's been a lot of the Trump administration. It's been a lot of attention economy stuff as I'm trying to figure out my relationship to all of that stuff. And so I have like struggled with all of that, and it has been very hard because you lose yourself quite a bit. And so the things I'm hopeful about are things that are in my immediate control. Like I like to garden, like I have a garden and I grow lemons, mandarins and oranges and
Wow.
kale, and I can go outside and see the dirt and see the growth and realize like everything does grow anew again as long as we don't have nuclear winter. And I ride my bike a lot, and I like to see people doing things during their day. And I have a dog that I really enjoy being around, and I have a family and relationships. And so I think that's like what you have to root yourself in, is it's very easy to get lost in the global, and you really like, not to be up on a soapbox about it, but like you do have to like focus on the local, because there's nothing you can control on the global level. Like you can freak out about it, make videos about it, but at the end of the day, it's what you do and the where you are.
There's some guys
so-
who could do something on the global level.
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
out
yeah.
there.
Plotting.
Maybe they're on a Discord channel, and they maybe don't have that much to lose. And
Luke-
they said,
Luke's
hey,
not going to be happy about it.
you know what?
What's
Maybe
the,
I take matters
who's the
into my-
Discord channel?
Oh, no,
Oh.
he's hinting at a Lee Harvey kind of situation being somewhere out there. Yeah, don't drag her into this. Don't implicate her.
I
just
was
saying,
really
they're-
trying to be like hopeful and light, because
No.
I guess
No.
it's not your all. I mean the decor says
Yeah.
enough about your all's vibe, but
We've just been. Well, wait. Before we do this, would you like to plug anything for the audience? I mean, we to reiterate what your book is called, where people can find it, and where you'd like to point people to.
yeah. So the book is In This Economy, and it's wherever books are sold. And then the newsletter is kyla.substack.com. And I publish on social media almost every day, kind of talking about the economy. And yeah, so it's yeah.
I totally forgot to say it to people, but if you've enjoyed this, you're still watching, please give the video a thumbs up.
Yeah.
And we have the Gandalf quote that you pulled up. Would you like to read it to take us out?
Yeah, he says to Frodo, or Frodo says to Gandalf, "I wish it need not have happened in my time." And then Gandalf says back, "So do I. And so do all of us who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us."
Wow, that's really good.
Yeah.
There you have it, folks. Everything's going to be okay, according to Kyla.
If you're one of those guys on those Discords, I'd like to say all we have to decide is what to do with the time given to us. Okay? That's all we can do.
All right. Thanks so much for watching and listening, folks. We'll see you at the bonus benandemilshow.com. And thank you very much.
Coming up on this week's episode of benandemilshow.com.
I still have nightmares about being a waiter and just sucking at it and people getting mad at me.
It is very stressful. I always ask Sarah if she thinks I have what it takes to be a waiter, and she always
No.
laughs. And I say, let me do one.
You'd be rude to people.
Yeah, well, she was like, number one, you just like don't like people.
Mhm.
And I'm like, come on, let me do one shift. Even if we were to do it, you would just hate it so much. Not only would you be bad at it, you also would dislike it.
Arguably, the worst combination for someone being a server is not liking it and being bad at it.
Like,
My
you're
kids are
you're
going to be
hit
cool.
them.
They're going to know how, by 10, they're going to know how to kickflip. They're going to be too cool to be.
Do you think you'll hit them?
Do I think I'll hit my kids? No, I won't need to.
What if they're standing on the table at a restaurant?
They will know that they just will know not to fuck with me like that.
How?
They'll just respect me.
Because of the hitting.
No. And they had a speaker with a microphone attached to it. And you're not even going to say anything, are you? I just like saying, I've been turning micro into Michael with everything I say. Michael Plastics, microwave.
What is the response you wanted from that? Just tell me. I'll give it. I want to give you what you want. So just tell me.
There's nothing you can say.
Just tell me what to do. I want to give you what you want.
I wanted you to go, did you just call it a microphone? And I go, yeah.
But you've been doing it on this. You've been doing it on the show.
Saying Michael stuff?
You tweeted about it.
Yeah, Michael Plastics.
Yep. And then you say it to me. And I want to give you what you want. Just tell me what to do.
Yeah, that's it. No, there's nothing.
To just go like.
It's pretty funny.